Welcome to Missions Connect, a brand new way to connect with missionaries. Brought to you by Shalom World and Family Missions Company. I'm your host, Kevin Kuster. On today's episode, we're going to be interviewing the Vehige family. They did missions in India and the Philippines. They're currently residing at Family Missions in Louisiana. So let's meet them right now on Mission Connect. Thomas, Genevieve, how are ya?
Hi.
Good. How are you, Kevin?
We struggled connecting a little bit, but thank you so much for sitting down and taking some time to talk with us today.
Yeah, no worries. We're excited.
Yeah. I'm super excited to spend some time with both of you, and really just to kind of hear more about your story. I read a little bit about you guys, and I just found it so fascinating, and I just want to thank you for your willingness to serve and your willingness to serve other people. So first of all, thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you, Kevin.
But as I understand, you're right down the street or very close to Family Missions Company. And tell me what you're doing. What is an average day, if there is such a thing? Tell me what you're doing now.
Yeah, we're raising kids.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
And that's harder than being in mission fields.
Yeah, well,
yes, it is.
It's a mission field of its own. On mission for our kids' hearts for Jesus. So we came back in order to, we knew each other. We both were trained the same year. And I ended up finally pursuing her. I'm trying to sum up the story. And we ended up coming back to the United States to get married. And so when we did that, we decided to take the first year of our married life and just be here as a couple. And then the Lord has continued to call us to remain here in the States. And so what I do down the road, we live a mile down the road from Big Woods, which is our mission base where FMC is located. I am in charge of the groundskeeping and the maintenance of our housing for missionaries. Which is a funny thing, too, because I have a theology degree. I do not know how to fix things. And so the Lord called me, who is not equipped to to do another thing that I didn't think I was equipped for. But he's invited me, when I was asked to take on this role, I was overwhelmed. But he has invited me to really help Big Woods, which is the name of our mission base, to become a place of beauty and order, so that when people come here to be trained, or when they come back from the field for rest, that they can encounter Jesus here too, not just in those places where they're serving or where they will serve, but to meet him here and have rest and have order, so that they can better be filled up and be sent out. And so that's a lot of what I do, which that includes grass cutting, includes fixing buildings that are falling apart, includes septic tank stuff, not fun stuff all the time, but yeah, it is still beautiful. And I found that what the Lord invited me to do is to every day start and offer my work to him for the missionaries and for his glory. And that's how I am specifically connected, I guess, how we are connected to FMC's mission.
And I think in the future, we do desire to go out and again as a family, and how we see this time is really just a time of growing and learning how to be a family first, before we add in a whole new culture. But it really is our desire to be a family in the foreign mission field.
All right, so let's kind of go back a little bit. If I can, we'll start with you, Thomas. Okay. Just tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like, right? Were you someone who was raised with faith, or kind of what was your experience like as a young person?
Yeah, good question. Back to the start. So at a very early age, my parents separated and divorced, and I was raised by my father and with my younger brother. And we would visit my mom every once in a while. And my dad was raised Catholic, but he didn't really practice anything more than going to Mass on Sundays. and he didn't really know his faith that well. And then he was at work, and a Jehovah's Witness came up and was kind of harassing him about his Catholic faith, and my dad didn't have the answers. And so my dad started to listen to tapes. It was back when tapes were cool. But listening to tapes about the Catholic faith and reading his Bible, and he just like he fell in love with the Catholic Church and with Jesus, probably for the first time. And so I grew up in that context.
Beautiful. All right, Genevieve, how about you? Tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like and your faith journey.
My parents also divorced, and for us, we got our faith from our dad. It was very important to him, and so he would come every Sunday, pick us up, and we would walk to church, and that was just what we did, you know. And it was like there was really no option, and not like there'd be an option, but you know, in my mind, it was like if we were ever to upset my dad, like sometimes it'd be like, I'm not going to go to church, you know, like that would be the most upsetting thing. I have 3 older sisters, so I'm the youngest. So I kind of just, you know, did what I was told, I feel like. But for me, I really saw like the faith that I really saw just a lot of rules, and it wasn't fun. I didn't find it fun, which I know it's silly, but that's important as a kid. And so that's kind of, it was in middle school, really, when I kind of started following my friends, and kind of started living like a double life. Like it's like I was one way with my family and with my friends another way.
Sure.
Yeah. So I definitely a strong foundation. I never stopped going to church. So my sister became a missionary with Family Missions Company. And no surprise to any of us, you know, we called her Mother Teresa growing up. She was always like a saint. And she would come home, and she was, you know, in Mexico and in the Philippines, and she'd come home and she'd be talking to me about Jesus. And I found it encouraging. I was in college and I was struggling, but I didn't really want anything to do with it. And so I got to a very low point in my life, and my mom went on a mission trip. My mom said, okay, I'm going to go visit my daughter. She went on a mission trip to Mexico. And my mom had left the church for many years. And that week she came back to the church. She went to confession and came back to the church after many years. So my mom was so excited about this. And she came home from Mexico in this mission trip. And she said, Genevieve, you have to go. You just got to go. And at that point, I had a boyfriend, but we were on a break. And it was just so messy. I was so unhappy. I was so lonely. I was just struggling. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm not with my boyfriend right now, so I have a bit of free time. I could do this trip, you know? So I said yes. I kind of regretted it, you know, but I was like, I'm going. So when the day came to go, my mom came to my house and packed my bag. Like I was crying. I was like, Mom, I don't want to go. So my mom came and packed my bag and set me off. And so I was really upset about being there. We drove down to Mexico from Louisiana, and the whole ride, I was just so upset. But then once I got to Mexico, I just had this grace come over me that just said, just be open, just be open. And so I was like, okay, I'll just be open to this. And it was the greatest week of my life, because what struck me the most when I was there was everyone around me was so joyful. They were so happy. And I was really longing for happiness, really longing for true joy. And I just was like, where are they getting this? You know, like, what, you know, I was searching in so many different ways, and I was like, where are they getting this? And they were like, it's Jesus. And so that I was really taken aback, because I had not experienced that. I had tried many things. You know, I was into fitness. I was trying to do better in college. I was working, you know, relationships, going out, and none of that was bringing me happiness. And so, so it was that week. So the Lord just really spoke to me profoundly that week. I was just really convicted that week to change my life. And what it came down to was I kind of reflected on the past year and a half of my life. And I said, wow, this has been miserable. Like I was so depressed. But if you looked at my social media, you would have thought I was so happy. Like I just
But
put
of
on a really
course,
great front.
I've experienced that, and I'd just like to stay on that for a moment, because I feel like that is such a hard concept for people to grasp. That in the United States and Western cultures, it's like stuff makes you happy, right? Or it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Can either one of you share about that experience that you've had in terms of the joy that you experience in the missions?
Yes. So for me, the time in missions, sometimes our living conditions, the things I had access to, is just so different than in the States. But there is so much joy. There is so much peace in knowing I was in the center of the Lord's will. So that's what comes to mind.
That's beautiful. So Thomas, your faith is developing through adoration. You have this sense that God, loves you and he wants to use you. Where did it grow from there after that experience, and how did your faith life continue to grow?
Yeah, well, from adoration, I started being interested in the faith and everything. And then...
Well, and you felt called to be a priest, right?
Well, so I started doing this program, Totus Tuus, which is in the United States. And it's just like you go in the summertime as a college student, you go to different parishes in your diocese and teach children the faith, grade schoolers and high schoolers. And it was there that like I fell in love again. I was taught to teach the faith, and it was just another beautiful experience. And in that experience, we were formed by some priests in my diocese, and I just saw the beauty of that, of their life, kind of like the spousal imagery, like how they give themselves completely as a husband and as a father to their people, their church, their parish. And that spousal imagery drew me. After college, I studied theology in school, my last 2 years of school. And after that time, I felt that the best thing I could do for the Lord was to go to the seminary and to become a priest. And I guess one of the there's a lot of stuff there, but one of the most beautiful conversions I feel like I had was I was in the seminary, and it was beautiful. But the Lord started to show me that I really desired to be a husband and father, and then in some big ways, I was choosing to sacrifice the desires that He had put in my heart in order to please Him, in order to make sure that He had to love me.
That's fantastic. There's so much to it, and I just love that Genevieve is like, yeah, remember that thing about the seminary? It's like this big chunk left out, right? All right, so Thomas, why Genevieve is taking care of one of your little ones. So Thomas, I'd like to talk with you about your first missionary experience. And as I understand, you selected India, and can you just explain to us, just share with us, what was that like, and why did you choose India?
Yeah. Well, so our first year, when we were formed, our first year, we actually are asked to go to a certain places. They were discerned for us. And then I didn't choose India, but I was invited to go to India. But they would have, if I would have said no, they would have been like, okay, we'll figure that out. But I did actually pray about it, and the Lord just gave me a ton of peace. And I found a lot of meaning. My name is Thomas, and St. Thomas the Apostle was the first one to bring the gospel there. So I was like, that's beautiful. And so, I went to India. It was just a beautiful experience. India is like no other place I've ever been. It's just extremely unique. And then you go to a different part of India, and it's extremely unique in a different way. But I think what I loved about India is I was just very free to share with people. People are very open there. They're very open to faith. They're very open to different religions for them as well. Yeah, the Lord just like grew me a ton. I think a lot of the fruit wasn't, again, like it was like not necessarily in India. I think a lot of the fruit was like in my own heart, being able to learn to love him, to trust him.
Is Genevieve ready to come back and sit down? Great.
Yeah, and she's bringing our youngest daughter, Agnes Therese. She was born Easter morning. Our little Easter lamb. And she's gonna love this.
Oh,
this is Agnes.
Beautiful. Hi.
Yeah, she's so cute. She's 16 weeks, right? Yeah, 16 weeks.
Genevieve, I wanted to ask you about, so you went on your first mission trip in Mexico, you were kicking and fighting, but then you experienced all this joy. Tell me about your next missions and where you went. I believe it was the Philippines. And what did you do in the mission fields of in the Philippines?
That was the first 2 years I was teaching, and I stayed another 2 years, but I moved to a different island. And so the next 2 years, I was on a different island, and the ministry there we did a lot of prison ministry. We had a Bible study at a prison. We did a lot of hospital ministry, visiting people in the hospital. And we had there was a squatters village there, and we did a lot of ministry there, a Bible study, and really just trying to build relationships with the people there. And also working with a lot of local street kids. And that was just, I mean, there's a lot of street kids, and that just kind of came about naturally, making friendships with them.
What are some of the struggles that you encountered and had to overcome in the mission fields?
Moving to a new climate. It was so hot in the Philippines, and especially the island I was on, and so I felt like I was wearing, sports clothes and sport wicking clothes. And it's, I think another struggle for me was there's so much need. There was so much need in the Philippines, and just oftentimes feeling guilty and not knowing, it's like you can't help everyone, but feeling like you want to help everyone. And so I think sometimes I struggle sometimes trying to do things on my own and realizing like I'm not the savior, like the Lord's called me here and I'm limited in what I can do. But it's just so hard when you see so much need. That was a struggle for me, and sometimes it would look like guilt, and that's not what the Lord wanted me. It didn't want me to be living in guilt, but how to know what He's calling you to help with, what He's calling you to do, and what He's calling you to just pray for, if that makes sense.
Tell us, how did they come alongside, and so how did Family Missions come along and support you to become missionaries?
Yeah, good question. So I came down here to Louisiana from Kansas. I kind of like left everything like Genevieve shared behind, and I spent, I think it was 3 months at the time, like just being trained and being poured into, being formed as a missionary. One thing we did, we read the book of Acts, and we said this is the church's first missionary activity. Like, let's try to model our lives like this. We also read A Mission of the Redeemer by John Paul II. Beautiful document where he calls us all, no matter what we're doing in lives, we're all called to do the mission work of the church, to share Jesus with the world, whether it's at home or whatever. So that was another big formation. We also received a lot of talks from our founders, Frank and Jeannie Summers. They would give us some talks from their time in missions as they started this organization. And I think one of the big things that's one of the powerful things that I received, we received early on in the intake experience. That means when they're forming us to be new missionaries. They shared with us the kerygma, which is the basic proclamation of the faith.
So I guess I kind of just want to close a little bit by saying, what are some of your hopes and your dreams, right? And I understand that many times we just need to put ourselves in the position of whatever God wants, right? But if you kind of cast a little bit of a vision for yourselves as family, what would that be? What would your prayer be?
I think what comes to my prayer is just to have the courage to continue in his mission for us and in going back into the foreign field to raise our kids in missions. That might, it can be scary with kids. As a single woman, I was like, whoa! But when I think about raising kids, and it's like, oh gosh, it's just different than my upbringing, right? So my prayer is just to continue to have that courage to follow the Lord in that calling in missions. And I just, for a vision, a dream that's always been Thomas's is to have a family in the mission field. Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah, like that was originally when I heard about the family that was living a missionary life with their 7 kids. That's what actually drew me to missions. Is it wasn't to be a single missionary, but like, wow, you can do this with kids and a family. Like I can have the beautiful vocation of marriage and family, and I can use it for the glory of God in this beautiful, unique way in foreign missions. So yeah, I'm just excited for that time when the Lord does call us to wherever to get to share our kids and our family with the world in missions.
It's beautiful. Well, as I'm looking at both of you, Thomas, I think about your heart's desire, right, to serve God, but thinking you need to do that in order to earn his love, right? And then you felt a little release that you could pursue family life and being a husband, and now here you are, beautiful wife and a daughter, and so it's just fantastic. And Genevieve, like, I think it's so funny when I think about you in the car kicking and screaming and not wanting to go, right? And now I see nothing but joy on your face. You continue to smile, you laugh all the time. And it's just so obvious that God has touched both of you, and that touch has got to be passed on to other people. So guys, thanks again for joining us and sharing your hearts and your stories and your work in the mission field. And what we like to say here at Mission Connect is connect in Christ.
Connect in Christ.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
God bless.
Praying you'll join us for our next show. I'm your host, Kevin Kuster. This is Mission Connect, brought to you by Shalom World and Family Missions Company.
Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.